Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Can you grab your seats, please? We're just going to need 2 minutes. We're just sending a quick email to, we have alternate directors and directors from outside the TNRD that are zooming in. So Karen, Jay, and Jackie, if you can hear me, if you can check your email, we want to just make sure that you're able to vote in the election. So an email will be coming your way with directions here in the next 2 minutes, and then we'll start the meeting shortly thereafter. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Good morning again, everybody. Welcome to the Thompson Regional Hospital Board inaugural meeting. I would like to now call the meeting to order. The TNRD acknowledges that we can connect with many First Nation communities across our vast regional district, and today we are located on the Kamloops to Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with the Kamloops to Secwepemc and respect the territory and the land on which we gather today. So this initial meeting will certainly be new for many of us in this room, and the board members especially around the table, but we'll do our best to orientate you and help you understand the process. Unfortunately, we are missing a few of the board members that reside outside the TNRD due to some scheduling conflicts, but they are able to join us via Zoom today. So welcome to Kieran Playfair, Randy McNeary, who is here in the room, Jay Simpson, and Jackie Rasmussen. So they're going to be joining us remotely as well. As mentioned in our TNRD board orientation session, the purpose of this board under the provincial legislation is quite simple. It's the approval of funding for Interior Health capital and equipment for our hospital district facilities. It's broken down into two categories, one being equipment less than $100,000, and the second category being equipment and capital greater than $100,000. So you're going to hear more about that today from Interior Health. Given that this is our first meeting, we typically would have this meeting in November. Because of the election, we did push it back into December, and that'll change in the years going forward. Interior Health staff are here today, so welcome to them. To tell us a little bit about themselves, introduce themselves and share a little bit about their roles. And they're also going to be talking about the capital equipment process that I was mentioning earlier. As you can imagine, these types of decisions require clear and accurate information, stakeholder engagement, timely communication, and most importantly, a strong relationship to ensure we are on the same page and aligned. That's our goal today as we start the discussion with the new board of directors for the hospital district. So that all being said, I would like to now call upon our corporate officer, Ms. Campbell, to oversee the election of the chair and the vice chair.
Thank you, CAO Hildebrand. So as set out in the Hospital District Act, and just for those of you who are new to this board, the Hospital District Act is the governing legislation for the hospital board, not the Local Government Act. Some aspects of the Local Government Act apply, but it's mainly under the Hospital District Act. So we are going to carry out the election of chair for the Thompson Regional Hospital Board. Nominations will be called 3 times. As candidates are nominated, they will be asked if they consent to their nomination, and then nominations will be closed. If there is only one consenting candidate, then that candidate will be acclaimed as chair. If there are 2 or more consenting candidates, then each candidate will be given 2 minutes to say a few words if they wish before the ballots are distributed. So I will now call for nominations for the position of chair. Director Blackwell.
I nominate Director O'Reilly.
Director O'Reilly, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Second call for nominations for the office of chair. Third and final call for nominations for the office of chair. I declare the nominations closed and Director O'Reilly is acclaimed to the position of chair. Congratulations, Director O'Reilly. Director O'Reilly, do you maybe want to switch with Chair Roden? Are you comfortable chairing from that spot, or?
Yeah, I'll switch to the vice.
Yeah, we're going to do the vice. Yeah. So I'm now going to carry out the elections for the position of acting chair. That's the title is acting chair, not vice chair for the hospital district board. So first call for nominations for the office of acting chair.
I'd like to nominate Director Blackwell.
Director Blackwell, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Thank you. Second call for nominations for the office of acting chair. Third and final call for nominations for the office of acting chair. I declare the nominations closed for the office of acting chair, and Director Blackwell has been acclaimed to the position of acting chair.
Congratulations to Chair O'Reilly and Acting Chair Blackwell. And so it's now my honor to formally pass the meeting over to Chair O'Reilly.
Thank you, CEO Hildebrand. I'll go to 3.1, ask for approval of the minutes. Moved by Director Stamen, second by Sarai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving in to 4.1, opening comments, and I kind of just got thrown in this today. But one thing I want to say is the regional hospital district to me is a hub and spoke model. And one thing I know about hub and spoke models is if one of the spokes is weak, the entire wheel is weak. And we need to continue to advocate for the villages and the towns and the cities in our entire region. And that will be crucial going forward. As a board, we need to seek and look for more opportunity for input for the capital requests that come forward to us. And I've heard that from a lot of directors. And I believe working with Interior Health and they are hearing that as well, is that we want to have more input and say. And I think that's incredibly important for Kamloops and for all of the outlying regions. It is important to do that efficiently and effectively. And that's going to be key. And so I think we can work on that as a team. I have a track record of building strong teams and working together and coming up with a common goal, both municipally, regionally, and provincially. And I look forward to working with this board. And lastly, I just want to say, one thing that is not lost on me is that as we go through a capital request in minutes from now, our friends at Sun Rivers and Sienna Ridge are not paying into the hospital tax for the regional district to the tune of $250,000 a year. So when we look at that list of what we're going to be asked to approve today, and we look if we could add another $250,000 to it, that helps the region as a whole. And furthermore, if it weren't to be applied to that, that $250,000 could cover the debt servicing for a new parkade at the hospital. So there are all of these things that need to be looked at. And one thing that I believe fundamentally, we need to look at equal taxation for Sun Rivers and Sienna Ridge as equal as RIH provides services to the residents of those neighborhoods. And yeah, so I look forward to working with all of you over the coming years, and hopefully we can set some good strategy on how we want to get better healthcare for the region. So thank you. Okay, introductions, high-level update from Interior Health representatives. And I don't know who wants to come first, but I'll open the mic. Thank you.
Are we able to get it on? Oh, great, thank you. Do I push here?
You're good.
I'm good. Good morning. My name is Diane Shendrick. I'm Vice President of Clinical Operations for Interior Health, and it is my pleasure to be here with the entire Interior Health team this morning. And we'll provide an overview about Interior Health, and then certainly move further into the requests that we are putting forward today. I too would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are collectively gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Shuevnik Nation. I'm pleased to present the IH North and West leadership team. Not all are here today. I'd like to introduce by picture Dr. Patrick O'Connor, who is our interim Vice President of Medicine and Quality. Our other physician leaders are Dr. Doug Smith, who is the Executive Medical Director for IH North, and Dr. Curtis Bell, who is the Executive Director for our primary community and seniors care for IH North. Our clinical operational team, Carl Meadows is not here with us today. He is an interim clinical operations director for rural and acute community in IH West. Pleased to have Lisa Zeta-Zanadas, who will be representing and speaking to you on behalf of that portfolio today. Lisa is permanently the executive director of clinical operations for our Kamloops community portfolio. And Tracy Rani is the executive director for clinical operations for Royal Inland Hospital, who is here with us as well today. And her dyad physician partner is Dr. Elizabeth Parfit, who is the interim chief of staff for Royal Inland Hospital. A few quick facts about Interior Health. We do serve we serve 60 municipalities and provide care to over 834,000 individuals. We also have 54 First Nation communities, along with 15 Métis chartered communities within Interior Health. We are very pleased that we have 2 tertiary level care hospitals, one located in Kelowna, as you know, and the second tertiary level hospital is here in Kamloops that serves Kamloops and all of IH West area, as well as some from the North Okanagan. We have 4 regional hospitals within Interior Health. Within IH West and Kamloops, we do not have a regional hospital. The tertiary level hospital does provide that level of service, and 16 community hospitals. We have 7 regional hospital districts, along with 7 divisions of family practice and 7 primary care networks. And I'll just let you pause here for a minute and let you take a look at the other statistics on the slide. A little bit more about our population. We do serve an older population. You can see the percentage of population over age 65. We are the second highest in the province and have almost a 25% population that we do serve. The highest is Vancouver Island Health Authority. The percentage of population over 75, again, we are second highest in the province and serve around a 10% population of people over age 75. The largest Aboriginal population is within Interior Health Authority. We have the most communities that are incorporated. We also have the highest number of hospital sites, as well as the largest geography within the province of BC. Critical operations portfolio oversees leadership for the provision of acute, community, long-term care, our mental health and substance use, public health, primary care operations, and also allied health services. The portfolio also provides the operational leadership within IH West, North Okanagan, and East Kootenay regions. So this portfolio has the largest geography of all of Interior Health. In addition, we do provide operational leadership within these geographical areas, but we also lead critical care, emergency and trauma services, maternal and child health, renal services, surgical services, overseeing all the clinical operations and having the networks responsible, along with our professional practice office and the chief operating officer, the chief nursing officer. Clinical operations, IH North has direct responsibility for the surgical strategy, which is a strategic priority for Interior Health. And our overarching vision is sustainability of services and taking care of people that we provide service to and that work for Interior Health. At this time, I'd like to invite Lisa Zetas-Donatas up to the podium, who will speak to our rural services and provide an operational overview. Welcome, Lisa.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. There's some new faces and ones that I've seen for a number of years. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you today. So as we talk about our contacts in our rural areas, which the slide was just up regarding our rural areas, we have 2 directors that are overseeing our rural areas in IH West for the Upper Thompson and the Caribou, Chilcotin, and South Caribou. So when we look at the ones within our Thompson region, we have Merritt and Logan Lake. The manager is Amanda Johnson, with the director for her region being Ian Wood, who I know some of you have worked with. Ashcroft and Clinton is Michelle Murray. Lillooet and Lytton is Jeff Harrison. Both of those also report up to Director Ian Wood. The Barrier, Clearwater, and Blue River is Heidi Schilling, and Heidi reports up through Natalie Kulik. And for Chase and Kamloops Outreach Services, we have Zoe Bradshaw, and Zoe reports up through Karen Cooper. So we have some capital planning requests that are underway right now. The first is for the Ashcroft Urgent and Primary Care Center, the UPCC. Ashcroft just opened their UPCC a couple of months ago. I am very, very happy with the way that it's moving forward. Thank you, Mayor Roden. We have almost all of our staff hired. We do have allied health positions that we're still working on hiring. And we have new physicians that will be joining the community in 2023. We're doing capital planning in that area to revitalize the healthcare center and to begin to move from the model that we had prior into a more cohesive model within the building. In Lytton, we're starting to enter phase 2 of our service model, and we'll be talking about that on a later slide with full information regarding the next steps for Lytton in the rebuilding of the healthcare services. And in Barrier, we're moving forward with our laboratory item replacement project. So for reestablishing services in Lytton, I can't begin to tell you how happy I am that we're beginning to see the renewal of health services in the area. It's been a very difficult time for our citizens in Lytton, and my heart goes out to the entire community and the surrounding communities who are assisting. So to those here from Lillooet today, thank you very much for the help that you've been providing. Right now, we're working out of our Lytton First Nation healthcare site. We have electronic medical records in place. We have home health in place. MHSU is coming in to provide services, which is mental health substance use, and they're providing opioid agonist therapy as well. We have a calendar of services posted at the site. So anybody who wants to know when they can come in can see it there. We also posted it on the Facebook page, the Lytton Facebook page. You all have vibrant Facebook pages in your communities, and we often link to our interior health information so that you can see where you need to go to receive service. The primary care team we have in place now consists of physician, nurse, medical assistant, and the service is available 5 days a week. We have 3 and up to 5 primary care providers that are providing service. So we have the 3 signed on now. 1 has just signed, so that's new information. And we have a 5th that we expect will be joining us as well to ensure that we have physician services in the community. And we're beginning the work now to start some inpatient laboratory in-house laboratory services. So that will be a limited service because there isn't the space that we need to be able to do it. But entering into phase 2, phase 2 will be movement of a mobile unit to the site, which will allow a more robust laboratory service. And of course, phase 3, once we get the mobile there and expand our services, we will be looking at the rebuild of our system of healthcare with a more permanent site. So there's our Ashcroft UPCC. I smile because this is a 3.5-year journey that I took with some people in the room. We are now open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We have a virtual care pilot that started. So we have in-person physicians on Saturdays and Sundays, virtual care Monday through Fridays. It's the first virtual care of this nature in a rural area that we've put in place. And we have 2 additional physicians like I said, that will join us in 2023, at which will enable us to be operational with physician services 7 days a week in person. We have an Aboriginal patient navigator, and this is something that in all of our communities, we've been very fortunate. While we're talking about Ashcroft, we've actually had over 5 FTE, which have been embedded into our rural communities through our primary care initiative, as well as through our UPCC initiative. So what this is seeking to do is to connect our Aboriginal patients and their healthcare system, because we have a very segmented system where we have Interior Health Services, First Nation Health Authority services, and federally funded services. And these navigators will seek to connect those dots so that we can ensure, regardless of where people are in the community, that they're receiving the care, and we're linking in our systems, because as we've talked about in other meetings, we know our healthcare systems are diverse and they don't always talk to each other. So these will be humans that will help link people in. Dr. Hemlican Memorial Hospital has been open, the emergency room, since September for 24/7. We have not had service disruptions since September, and we are seeking to ensure that we do not have them going forward. We have hired permanent staff to the site. We still have some work to do on filling all positions, but we have achieved a level of stability there that I'm much more comfortable with, as I'm sure are the people of Clearwater. And in addition, we have our first site where we've launched our self-book X-ray appointments. So instead of having to call in and make an appointment, people can go book their own appointment, and it will allow people who are comfortable with that mechanism of booking to book in that way. We haven't gone, people can still call in. That is the question that we do get frequently for people who do not feel as comfortable with automated or online services. Is there still a mechanism? And there is. So I brought this slide because as we talk about how our funding model works, we want to ensure that we too, we talked about a hub and spoke model, and I think you mentioned that earlier. We too operate as a hub and spoke model. So Diane showed our tertiary hospital, and I wanted to go through and show you the people who are coming in for your visits. And this is in the 21-22 year. This will be updated for 22-23 shortly. So in looking at this, what we see is that when we talk about parking in Kamloops, it's for all of our regions, because we need to make sure that people who do come for our services that are tertiary in nature, that they have somewhere where they can park their car, that we continue to invest in our infrastructure at the Kamloops Royal Inland Hospital and the community services, because they're being utilized by the entire Thompson region. And I expect these numbers will continue to climb. The data that Diane shared with you about the age of the population we're serving, you will see that number increase over 75, because that is the trajectory that we're on in our rural communities. And I know I'm not telling you anything that this group doesn't know, because we've worked together and watched the population change. But what that means is 80% of healthcare service is used in the last 20% of life. So we will see ongoing healthcare needs, both in your region for the stabilizing of the spokes, but also for the stabilizing of the hub where we have our tertiary services based. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Rainey to talk a bit about Royal Inland Hospital.
Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Rani. I'm the Executive Director for Royal Inland Hospital. I see many familiar faces and some new ones, and I look forward to getting to know you, and thank you for having me today. It's quite a high overview. And so I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions and please, when we get to, I'm happy to connect with people afterwards. But it is quite a high overview. I'll start with kind of some of the exciting things that have happened over the last few months since the last time we presented here. We opened up the Phil and Jenny Gallardi Tower. That was a really exciting day for physicians and staff to actually see that building come alive. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I can work with Scott and happy to get you in there for a site tour. It is beautiful. The patients have beautiful views. There's quiet spaces. There's nice care team areas, and there's also restorative spaces for our staff. It's just a really great building. Phase 2 renovations we'll talk a little bit about, and lots of work under the Kamloops Action Plan. So the emergency department, I think sometimes we were so excited about the tower, but we also have phase 2. Phase 2 is the renovations. Our emergency department, again, many of you have probably been there. It's on the small side. The footprint will double. The renovations had started, so we barely kind of got into the building and we started the renos on the emergency department. The first 18 months are going to be tough just because they're working in the environment and we'll have to phase it. But after that 18th month, they'll get a little bit of relief. We'll be able to open up some of the areas and get some flow. And then we'll work on mental health, work on the trauma base, and then it'll be completed in 2026. And so while we're under this more renovation, it's a little bit mazy in there right now. We're having to do some work with the level 1 concourse. I think many of you again remember the emitting, the old coffee shop. Right now, the flows through there are closed and we've had to reroute people. But again, this will improve as we move through the renovations. Pediatric inpatient unit is for renovations, and that will be in 2023. And our post-anesthetic room. So again, many of you may have remembered our 4 North. It was a very old unit. It was curtained. It was an old med surge, and we decommissioned it, which was a good thing. And so this space is now being renovated to help support our opening of our 10th OR and our new ORs coming in 2023. And this will take place over the next couple of years as well, and should be ready in early 2024. And then the morgue, this is part of our life cycle. It's an older space as well and needs a refresh, and that'll be completed in fall of 2024 as well. The Kamloops Action Plan. I'm truly not going to do this justice in the time that I have. Under Diane's leadership and working with Carl and Lisa and coming together with a really big plan to help support the work that needs to happen. So under an access and flow, what we mean by that is people coming into the system and people leaving the system. So whether they're coming in through the emergency department, we look at those transition points and how do we help those transition points for quality care, smoother, timely access. And so there's been lots of great work. And so some of the positive impacts that we've seen is decrease in our ambulance waiting to be offload, which is great. And also decrease in the emergency department holding admissions actually in there, which kind of blocks the whole department. So we're definitely seeing some improvement, still lots of work to do. Flexible and adaptable models of care. This is really looking at your acuity and complexity of your patient population and having the right skill mix for that patient population and having the right human resource and really making sure that they're working at full competence. And this is really exciting work and the teams are really engaged in this. And we have the professional practice office at Interior Health is supporting us, and we're working with the province on some really neat activities around that. Service delivery under this bucket is really looking at the different programs and working with our physicians. And so a couple examples is we've added an NP into the cardiac program to support those physicians. We've also added an emergency department access and flow physicians to really help, again, keep people moving through the system and help make those decisions and support the teams in those areas. Recruitment and retention. I'm going to go to another slide. There's been investment, 54 new grads. We do support Interior Health. We work as one system. So often we will ask for redeployment of other nurses to help support the site. We also work with external agencies to support the staffing levels there. One of the neat programs that we have that we're trying in acute, it's been in long-term care, is to take folks that don't have healthcare experience. They can apply into a program. They get training, paid training, PAGE education, hands-on experience. At the end of the training, they come out as a healthcare aide, and then they have a job at the end of it. So this is really exciting. We're piling that in acute, again, to get folks into the system. And so we've seen some, modest improvement, but there's still lots of work to do around recruitment and retention. And this is my team. So there's myself. I have 4 clinical directors, and you can see kind of the areas that they're responsible underneath there. And underneath them is 15 managers. And we work really closely with Lisa's team and Carl's team in regards to making sure that we're connected to the rural sites. We have good repatriations back to those home facilities and really work on those discharges as one system. And so again, I look forward to meeting all of you. I'll leave some cards here so you guys can contact me directly. And sometimes these nice gentlemen will help me as well if I'm unavailable. So I'd just like to say thank you so much. And thank you for having me at your first meeting.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Diane Kostachuk, and I'm the Business Operations Director. And in that role, I support the liaison between the Regional District, Hospital District, and Interior Health. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the capital process. So bear with the exciting financial stuff. And I just go like this. And like that. Okay, good. Okay, this slide speaks to the funding streams that the Interior Health receives from the ministry. So we have a funding stream that deals with the 5,000, over 5,000 and under $100,000 capital equipment. And excuse me, and those dollars are allocated based on population by regional hospital district. Those dollars also have to cover certain other things outside of operations, such as things like corporate equipment, vehicles, those kind of things, in addition to capital improvement projects at the various sites. And on the other side, we have what the ministry terms restricted capital grant. And this is where these are all the investments that we make that are over $100,000. And so those are looked at more on a regional basis as opposed to an individual geographic basis, although the geographic areas do provide input and are part of both the planning and the prioritization process. Excuse me. Should have had a drink of water. So the equipment over $100,000 and any kind of building renovation, improvement, that kind of thing falls under those routine capital investments. Anything over $5 million needs a business plan and needs to be approved by the ministry. And in addition, the ministry kind of reserves the right to review and approve any projects we have over $100,000. And this slide speaks to what we look at for the drivers for in capital investment. So as you know, from the previous, we have a very widely dispersed population, and we have a number of challenges in developing clinical capacity to provide quality, safe care equitably across the health authority. This is really comes into play, particularly with specialized services like cardiac, et cetera, things like that. So again, to the sort of hub and spoke model, similar, it's a network of care. So similar design. We look at the demand for service. Obviously, population needs, grows, changes, et cetera. And we need to look at, where we will be in the future and how our services will align as we move forward. We also look at sustainability in terms of, primarily in terms of our buildings and keeping our buildings are up to date and in good condition. There are facility condition assessments that are done on a regular basis and updated, and that's managed through our facilities area, but those help us to make decisions on where we need to make investments. And then, of course, we try and look at innovation and change. And really that's digital health is a big driver of that. And that's an important part of how we make decisions on a go-forward basis. Okay, the next slide, this is around our capital budget cycle. So just in terms of how things, how we move through the process on an annual basis, and this is done every single year. So in the beginning of sort of January, February, a portal will be opened and directors, managers, all sites have the ability to put forward requests for capital items. And those items are collated over, the portal is open for a couple of months, that they're collated and lists are created. So again, going back to the way the funding streams work, the $5,000 to $100,000 capital, those equipment lists are provided to a group of people who are again representative of all the different areas in that geographic region, and they get together and they prioritize what equipment is needed in those areas. And that the input comes from, you know, the managers, the frontline people, the physicians. You know, everybody has a role in at least being able to put forward their ideas, but also to, you know, to look at the prioritization cycle. So that's for the 5 to 100,000. For the over 100,000, it's more the decision-making process and the structure is more more IH wide. But again, there's representatives from all regions, all areas, and all types of programs, so that we can look at that across the region, prioritize what needs to be done first, and, you know, and have the right people at the table to make those decisions. So the review process and the prioritization happens through sort of late March to May. And then a list comes forward. That list is reviewed again by the Capital Planning Steering Committee. And finally, that list is presented. Senior executive team approves that list. And by December, it goes to the board and the board then approves it. So criteria for prioritization. So looking at strategic alignment across programs and across, you know, the future direction of where we need to go, making sure that we're looking at that and looking at that alignment, innovation, access and flow, as Tracy said, improving the way people, patients, residents move through the system, looking at, you know, whether we're going to have enough staff or whether the potential is there for enough staff. And of course, safety, risk management is high on the list. Urgency, you know, that fundamentally a lot of our equipment is replaced as it's nearing end of life. And, you know, that's that's an important part of how things are prioritized in terms of, you know, where it is. So if it needs to be replaced, it's going to come ahead of something that's new. On this slide, we just wanted to include just to demonstrate, I'm sure everyone feels it in their organizations, in their personal lives, etc., but around the cost escalation that we're seeing right now. So 22, 23, 14 to 16%. And you can see the other two out years. So this is, you know, definitely requiring the health authority to go back, review our current projects, look at where we can make changes if we have to make changes, look where we have to change schedules, etc. Is there, you know, what other options are there out there? But we're definitely seeing a significant impact. Again, looking at things are approved and it takes many years to actually get them into place. As Tracy was saying, 2026 for the end of the phase 2, you know, well, the costs will have changed by then too. So managing that, but it's unprecedented, just like I said, like everybody sees in their own personal lives. And I think, okay, and then the last slide is in your package. There is the $5,000 to $100,000 capital request for 22-23. I don't believe we're approving that today, but I just did a little summary up of where exactly the dollars are being spent in terms of programs or being requested in terms of programs, just to highlight, that they are directed at, patient care for the most part. I think in some of the other earlier presentation material, there's a lot of work being done in labs across the region in terms of, new analyzers, et cetera. So you see it's quite a number of equipment for the lab. And I think that's it for me. Questions?
Thank you, Director of Business Operations, Kostachuk. Just for the directors following along here, it was we kind of moved into 4.3. We went from 4.2 overview, and we went a little bit into 4.3 at the end there. But what I want to say, and if I can get confirmation from IHA and through our staff, if we can get a copy of this presentation sent out, there is a ton of information, especially for all of the new directors, let alone the ones that have been here for 4 or 8 years. It was a lot to digest. If we could have that sent out either through TNRD staff or through IH would be fantastic. So I will open the floor to questions. Dr. Green.
Thank you. I'm a new director, so I've got lots of things to contend with and sort out. So I'll ask some stupid questions. But
Stupid question.
on the under $100,000 items, if they're approved, is there any discretion? Or we're going to change it from this to that? There's $940,000 of funding under that $100,000 amount that was on your chart. If we approve those things, assuming we approve those things, is there any discretion to change those funds around to different items?
No, that list, no. That list basically are items that are either have been purchased or are in the process of being purchased for fiscal year 22-23, which for us ends in March 31st. So, so those items will not be changed. No, definitely not.
Thank you.
Director Stamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Diane, on the difference between the restricted and non-restricted on the capital. I see on the chart, it shows that on the restricted portion of it, there's a capital planning steering committee, but on the unrestricted, there's not.
No. So,
and can you clarify who is actually on these committees? Because you gave it kind of a general statement about all the consultation that goes on with these budgets, but it doesn't show anything with any consultation with this board. In the letter or in the notes, it says there is consultation with regional district staff, but it doesn't say anything about the board.
okay. So to answer the first part of your question, for the $500,000 to $100,000, there is a group of, I don't know if I would call them a steering committee, but a working group that consists of the leaders, managers, physicians from each site in each facility in Thompson in this regional district. And they manage and prioritize that list, the 5 to 100,000. So it's local in terms of the geography, whereas the over $100,000 list, again, has local representation, but it has broad the committee is IH in total that looks at that list. So the items, they're put forward by the individual areas. The individual areas working with their managers will look at their particular list and prioritize their own list. And then that list gets moved into sort of a larger list for the 5 to 100,000, and then prioritized by the regional group, which when I say regional, I mean regional to the Thompson Regional District, not regional for IH. The over 100,000 is looked at more on an IH wide basis, because again, you're looking at more like equipment like MRIs, like large pieces of equipment. So do we, are we, looking to add one, or, what's the urgency on, a piece of equipment at Royal Inland versus whatever, Caribou Memorial or Kelowna.
Thank you. Supplemental.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't want to talk about the MRI story. We'll talk about that later, but my question is that nobody else outside of that working group gets to see the list. And that's what I've been asking for in the past, is that how do we know what is actually on that list? And if we're looking at equipment that's going to be used in these facilities, is it in a 3 or 5 year plan? I'm not saying that it isn't getting prioritized by the people that are on the ground. What I'm saying is nobody else gets to see the formalization of that list until it comes here. That's my point.
Okay, and point taken. I think we're looking at ways to, enhance that engagement.
Thank you. Any further questions from directors? Director O'Connor, is that what? Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I just have a question about your slide about the Lytton St. Bartholomew's site. You said that Lytton Phase 2 service model, mobile replacement while rebuilding permanent sites, plural. And I'm just
Site,
it's supposed to be site.
just
not-
one site. I think the reason why that didn't twig for me is because we're looking at healthcare services, primary care services, lab services, as well as the assisted living services.
Okay.
So that was the sites part, and I should have referenced that in my presentation.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Director Sarai.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question and adding to Director Stamers, would it not be beneficial to this board that when your group in the rural areas of the hospitals are looking at their budgets and what their wants are, for the director of that area to be on that group, just to hear the wants and the request and maybe gives a heads up, and then we have a better understanding coming here from that area?
Well, I do think, I think, and I'm, this is my first time, well, not my first time here. I used to come here years ago, but my first time back in this role. So I do believe that engagement is a priority and it has been discussed in the past. So yes, looking to how that would work. I guess, we'd have to work out the logistics around how that actually, fits with people's different schedules and how that would, how we would line that up. I don't think we're not adverse to that. Right.
Thank you. And through Councillor Sarai, I believe that's part of the strategic direction we may want to go as a hospital board, and that's things that we can decide and how we want to work with IHA going forward. I am next on the speakers list. Just a comment about the X-ray appointment in Clearwater and the virtual doctors in Lytton. Are these going to be used as pilot projects and then further rolled out to the other communities throughout our region? Because it seems like I got excited about it, but I'm just wondering if it's going to continue on, if it's successful. Thank you.
Yes, and so yes, and yes, we are piloting both the virtual physicians in Ashcroft. It's, like I said, the first time we've tried to do this in a rural area, and it's working very well. And are also looking at expansion into our other rural communities to broaden our ability to service people. As well, for the MRI component, or I'm sorry, the diagnostic imaging component, we are looking at doing that as well in other areas. This is the first of the pilot, but if the pilot works well, we would look at expansion of services. I think Diane wanted to.
Thank you. May I go back to Director Blackwell's question?
Whoever this.
It was in regards, it was in regards to can the representative for the regional area participate in our prioritization of our up to 100,000 equipment? And yes, we should be able to make that work within local areas. So we will work on that on a go forward. I do want to really emphasize that equipment list most often is replacement of equipment that's at the end of life. It's often not new. There are times where we do have new higher quality equipment that's really advanced, but within that list is often equipment that we are replacing where our biomedical teams have said they no longer can repair. But we're happy to move forward and look at having each of the directors of local areas involved.
Thank you, Director Hamer Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the place to ask the question, but I'm just wondering if, you know, we've been focusing over the last 10 years or so on harm reduction model in, you know, our shelters, our supportive housing facilities. And I'm just wondering if you've been looking into more recovery focused facilities to lessen costs, because I believe, and I'm not sure, but I believe today we're paying $60 a day for harm reduction and $35 for recovery focused facilities. I don't know if this is the time to ask a question or not.
Director Shander.
That comes under our operational budgets as we look at our operations. And newer facilities, as what you're speaking to, is really a responsibility that we're working with BC Housing, as you know, so it's a partnership. So that type of ask would not normally come to this board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for clarification as well, for the newer people around here, the Regional Hospital District Board deals with capital projects and equipment. That's what we're here for. It's not so much on the level of service. It is working with the equipment that's required for Royal Inland Hospital as well as the surrounding areas. And again, we're all learning, and Interior Health seems like this big wheel. That is what we are here for, is for funding equipment and capital projects. Thank you. If there's no further questions, I will move on to 4.4. And that's the proposed meeting dates for the Thompson-Nicola Regional Hospital District. Does staff want to speak to that, or would you like me to provide commentary?
Thank you, Chair O'Reilly. I think it's pretty straightforward, unless there's any questions.
Okay. So somebody put a motion forward, please. Second by Director Blackwell. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to 4.5, Hospital Board 2023 provisional budget. And does staff want to take that, or do we want to move right in? And Director Fox. CEO Hildebrand, whoever wants to take it.
Sorry, well, I'll pass it along to CFO Fox. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning. I am about 2.5 weeks into my permanent role, so I'm going to start off with that just so you know what the expectation is here today from me. I liked that Diane kind of led off with exciting financial stuff, because I think that it was a great opening for me to start off with exciting financial stuff. Seems like what I'm going to bring you is great. I think that the last few weeks for me has been like cramming for an exam, learning about not only the regional district, but the hospital board at the same time. So I'm going to do my best to present what I have for you today and answer any questions that you might have. I do have a parking lot, so that if there's questions that arise that I am not able to answer today, I will write them down there and try and address your questions via email or bring them back to the next meeting. I think that you guys and probably a lot of board members, I can relate to. You're new and you're learning, and that's what I'm doing as well. So as much as I've picked up a ton of information that I should be able to guide you in the right direction, I am still also working to understand, bring you a plan and bring you a balanced budget, and ensure I make a recommendation so you can keep tax rates stable. I know what the outcome is that you're looking for. I brought you a 2023 provisional budget. However, it's not a draft. It's not any changes in numbers based on actuals. And that's because I've literally had 2.5 weeks to prepare, and I didn't want to bring you something that I wasn't prepared to speak to. So that is the reason for that. It has maybe less effect on the hospital district than it would on the regional district. For the simple fact that, as has been discussed, really the board and the finances, you can see a majority of the finances are there to fund capital. we have to do the borrowing to support these projects. So a lot of that is what you see in the financial statement is in regards to tracking the capital projects and tracking the funds that fund those projects. On page, I think it's 17 and 18 of your agenda, that's where you find the report, the provisional budget, and the financial statements. I'm not going to read the numbers, more so for the new board. I'm going to try and just explain what you're seeing. The tax requisition, the attachment, I think is page 18, and that's the 5-year financial plan. And on there, it shows revenues and expenditures. The revenues are generated from a large portion from your tax requisition. And then there's other sources of revenue like long-term borrowing, transfers from reserves, some other revenues. A lot of that is from interest and operating surplus from the previous year. Expenditures are your debenture principal and interest payments. We've separated out the patient care tower project, so you could track that one separately. And then we have all the other capital equipment and projects grouped together. Typically, when you see $5 million carried forward from year to year, that's an estimate of $1 million worth of projects that are under $100,000 and $4 million for projects that are estimated to be over. They are estimates, and you're going to see those numbers swing in actuality from year to year. The financing flexibility and the temporary borrowing interest, they are in essence for bridge financing. If we went over and we needed to access quick financing, we would have that ability, but it's also a tool to help stabilize tax rates. So what you'd see is in future years, these numbers are going to kind of jump up and down. It's because your tax requisition number up above, we're really trying to keep stable. So people, because you can imagine capital projects aren't static. The cost of those projects don't stay the same every year. So they're jumping up and down and up and down. So trying to keep a stable tax rate is really important, or else you're going out to your constituents trying to explain why these numbers are always jumping around. So that's one tool that's used to try and stabilize those tax rates. Also, you're going to see surpluses generated. Before I jump there, I should just say that there's a $75,000 operating expenditure. It refers to section 20-2. That refers to the section in the Hospital District Act. So if you're interested, it's really confusing. We read it over a couple times. Really, essentially, it says the hospital district can have a board, and it can have the power to set operating expenditures, and it has the power to borrow or save money that it hasn't spent for future expenditures. And I think that's 20-4 for reserves. So this $75,000 amount, it's just saying under that section, it empowers you to allocate some money for operating expenditures. And we never hit the $75,000 mark in the time that I've looked at. It just gives us that allowance, and it's paying for basically board costs, board indemnities. And I think there is a little bit of recruitment that has been allowed to help support special projects that I would definitely need to look into a bit further. But I think there was $5,000 over the last year. So on that note, I just want to point out that the 2023 provisional that I brought forward for approval based on the Hospital District Act recommending or requiring you to approve a provisional budget is literally based on previously approved 5-year plan, column 2023. And that is not going to be typically the case going forward. However, for this year, and a series of events that I will not disclose for my November personally, other than recovering from COVID at the end of it. That's what you're getting from me this year. And hopefully that will suffice for the board at this point. And I will answer any questions that you have.
And just for clarification for the board as well, the calendar that we adopted in 4.4 added on an extra meeting for January to go over the $100,000 or less items that are here today, so that we have time to digest and we can go through rather than approving that. What's being asked in 4.5 is the provisional budget here today, which needs to seek an approval. So I have Director Stamer Grenier. We'll start with Stamer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to Ms. Fox. Can you refresh our memory on the capital equipment IHA requests when we had 93.5 in 2021? It jumped up to 10 million in 2022, and then now we're looking at a projection of 5 million across the board. And again, you alluded to the split of $1 million under the 100,000 and then above. And I don't believe we've ever come close to spending close to spending $1 million in the 4 years that I've been here on that for the budget. Can you refresh my memory what that $10 million was for in 2022?
Thank you. So I am going to do my best to give you a few things that I reviewed on the list of capital over $100,000. One was a pharmacy reno, acute care, outpatient area expansion, humidifier, and an electrical upgrade. Those are some of the ones that came across in the larger capital project request. What I can tell you is that it probably be good to be able to provide a list to the board for a more complete idea of what was brought forward in the past, if that's something that we can provide. So you could compare the two, but I know it wasn't to the tune of $10 million. And I know we've only spent approximately $3 million in 2022.
Supplemental.
On those projects.
Thank you for that. And one of the reasons I'm asking is because I would believe last year, the ask was around 750,000 separate from the MRI request. And then now it looks like the request is around the 940,000. Is that correct? And that looks like about a 25% increase.
CFO Fox.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, what I've noticed in my review is some of the same projects are coming forward requesting further funding because of the cost increases, where they're talking about an uplift of like 14%. Now, when they're going back to do it, they need more money. So you'd see a project that came forward in 2019 or 2021 that is coming forward again with an additional request, but they explain that within their description to us. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. Before Director Grenier, I just want to let Director Playfair know that I do have you on the speakers list. Director Grenier.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief Financial Officer Fox, for those explanations ahead of time. It answered several of the questions that I had sent you beforehand. I want to focus on a series of questions relating to this capital equipment, the new and the old, and it's totaling in this 2022 calendar year over $19 million, which is even more than the patient care tower. So as a new director, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, I understand this fabulous tower that we built, but all of a sudden we've got $19 million to digest in 2022. And as a new director, that scares the heck out of me. Then I look down at these lines and there's two categories. One's called financing flexibility, and the other is the temporary borrowing interest. This is a 5-year plan, and these are sort of interim financing. It's almost like if you were carrying a credit card balance, perhaps, it would be interest associated with this temporary financing. You get a loan if you were going to borrow something in the long term at a lower interest rate. The interest under those two categories, the flexible financing and the temporary borrowing, totals $3.3 million over this 5-year budget. And it seems to me, if it's related to the 19.5, I have no idea, but if it's related to the 19.5, shouldn't we be looking at MFA financing to get that cost down? And is there an opportunity to reduce or eliminate flexible financing and temporary borrowing interest?
CFO Fox.
Thank you. Well, it's an interesting one because with both those two lines, although they're showing up in the budget, we don't actually expend anything towards them. So there's zero amounts. So what happens is anything that goes unspent and we brought in revenues is going to generate a surplus. So even though they're identified on there so that we could utilize them, if we remove them, yeah, you're going to see a decrease in overall taxation. But every time capital projects increase, all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing large swings in tax increases because we don't have the ability to move numbers up and down within our operating budget because it's only got a few line items in there. So I know, and possibly hard to understand from a non-financial budgeting perspective, there are literally lines that are showing on there for temporary financing that are not currently being accessed. There's nothing being expended against them. There's no credit card related amounts. It's temporary financing. So every project that we enter into, you will have to approve a bylaw for every project. So I have a giant list of projects and bylaws that we have that we track every year. So all the new projects that come forward, if they weren't in a current bylaw would have to change to address changes, and all new projects would have a new bylaw. Those projects are all supported by specific ways of financing them. Just to kind of relate it across. So we have cash, we have long-term investments, we have MFA. MFA obviously gives us the best interest rate. It's a pooled fund. When you have a surplus that's generated at the end of the year, so this is kind of going away from your direct questions about the financing, but when those monies don't get spent, yet we've got revenue coming in, whatever surplus is at the end of the year has to be carried forward to the next year. So because we have those surpluses, it's reducing the amount of taxation we require. If we start moving those numbers up and down, it starts forcing the tax number to move. So simply answered is those two lines are there to provide us the ability for short-term temporary financing if we need it. And they're separated in what would seem to be, here's a loan amount, here's an interest amount, based on reasonable numbers. But if you look forward and you look back, the flexible financing number is just going up and down like that in the budget, not in actual zero.
Supplemental?
Thank you for that explanation. I guess I have to go back to the taxpayers and explain to them what this budget's all about. And when I see 5 years, I'll call it credit card borrowing so that we can understand that it's temporary. It's not provisional. It's not MFA financing like we're planning on amortizing this over 30 years or 5 years or 10 years. It's really temporary borrowing. And this is a 5-year plan. And it seems to me that we should be able, as a hospital board or as a TNRD board, say, no, we don't need to borrow temporary, and our budgets don't show temporary. Our budgets show planned, especially on a 5-year plan. So it concerns me that we're collecting tax dollars knowing that we're not going to spend it or we haven't spent it. It concerns me that we're raising funds, tax dollars from our constituents, really just to build a pool for something else. I think that's what you've said to us, but if I've got it wrong, I've got it wrong. Sorry.
CFO Fox.
Thank you. So I would say that explanation would be correct if we didn't have a surplus. It's because we have a surplus. So that the surplus there is coming forward because we did not spend in the previous year. So that flexible financing that was budgeted for that didn't get spent becomes a surplus. That surplus draws down the amount of tax required. So if you look at all the revenue lines that add up to the total revenue needed. So if we take out the flexible financing, it'll benefit you this year only. Next year, there'll be no surplus. and it will not draw down the taxes. So the surplus carried forward reduces the amount of tax you need to charge. So it's a bit of a game, and it is hard to explain when you haven't had to go through the process of trying to balance that out. But it's because of the surplus and the big swings in spending. So they might ask for $20 million to be spent in 2022. And it's very likely we only spend 7 million. There's no other way of getting around that. That's going to create a surplus. So we tried to keep the tax rate stable enough to make sure we have enough money in our investments to cover the capital coming forward. But this, when you go to your constituents and you say, yeah, they have that there, they're never accessing it. And you're actually not being taxed for it right now. Because every year they generate a surplus. Taxes are being reduced by the amount of surplus that's created. And not spending money that's budgeted for is creating a surplus. So it's a carried forward surplus every year. But like I said, it might just involve more conversations, more understanding. If the board so wanted to remove those lines, I have talked to another regional district that said they didn't have those identified lines, but they still played with the numbers in the surplus because it keeps bouncing around. So they would force a surplus rather than showing those line items. So I know there's other ways that other regional districts reflect it, but they're all trying to achieve the same thing. And
Thank
it's
you,
just
CFO
stabilizing
Fox.
the tax rate.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. Director Playfair, do you have a comment? I see your hand is down now.
Hi, yes, thank you. I did have just a quick question for my own clarity. Sorry, again, a new person to this board, and I want to understand something. I'm just looking at the fact that the ongoing plan, the 5-year plan, has a 1.5% increase in tax requisition to with the anticipation that it will help to bump up the reserve fund. But then I also see that the patient care tower brings down the reserve fund, and it's expected to be as low as 12 million by the time of completion. I just want to be clear that the 1.5 just continues to go in, but it's not ever going to, until we draw down the rest of it, it's sort of offsetting the patient care tower or the drawing down of the reserve. Does that make sense?
CFO Fox.
Can I just ask for clarification? What is the 1.5? Where is that number coming from?
The 1.5% that's in the, hang on here. The tax requisition, which is going up by, I think it's 1.5%.
Okay.
Annually.
So I'm going to have to probably defer. I would say that I do see that it is going up that much year over year. I would anticipate it's to make sure that we're continually able to build our reserves back as we are depleting them. But I would have to look back historically to see if there's any other notes or reason that it was specifically being increased for.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rain.
Yeah, just on the provisional budget, the capital equipment over 100,000 and major projects, if I read it correctly, that's not included in this provisional budget.
Thank you. There is, if you look on the provisional budget, there is a line that says capital equipment, new IHA requests. And it shows $10 million. So that is the line there that estimates what they would be requesting. And that was just based on the previous provisional brought forward. Oh, and sorry, I better just look, sorry, 5 million. So that includes an estimate of $1 million for projects under and 4 million for projects over. So until we adopt a true budget, that should suffice for the new projects because the majority is passed.
Supplemental.
Yeah, so you're not anticipating any additional capital items that have not yet come forward to you, and that we would be in the $32 million range, or are there some projects that you have not yet seen that are going to bump this upward? And then my other question would be, this is balanced at 32 million. If there's additional costs coming, where's the funding coming for that?
CFO Fox.
Thank you. So yes, yes, you're right. The total capital over, we don't actually have the total of that. We're waiting for a letter to tell us what that's going to be. As I kind of stated at the beginning, this 23 provisional is strictly numbers that were carried forward from your previously approved plan. It has nothing new anticipated. There's no changes. These numbers for when you actually approve the budget in finality will change. This isn't a typical process. Would have just a few of those numbers change because we'd know a lot of those factors, and we would have brought you a provisional that had them incorporated. This provisional hasn't. So when we get the new numbers, these numbers will have to fluctuate and change, and we'll have to have another deliberation with the board.
CEO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair O'Reilly. And just for clarification to Director Rain, that we expect to receive that letter for capital over 100,000 next week. So that'll be reflected in our March meeting when we talk about the budget again.
Is supplemental, we're approving a budget, but obviously this is a very, very rough draft that could be out by as much as 25%. Yeah. So January is the key. I think the approval we're giving is really subject to a much more detailed review in January.
Absolutely. Thank you. And CEO Hildebrand.
Sorry, and if I may add, it is also a requirement of under the Hospital Act that a provisional has to go forward. And that's why we're going through the process where it's not required in the TNRD level.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got CFO Fox. I've got Director Stamer to close.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly to say that the projects, the provisional approval, we don't actually even take that number and start generating what a tax rate increase would be. So I understand from a board perspective, it is difficult to focus on approving something even provisionally, knowing that the tax requisition looks like it's going up. Internally as staff, we don't use these numbers to start generating taxes because we would have to go through the process all over. We have to wait for new assessment numbers to come in, which it's a big factor in there. So I don't know if that gives you any comfort, but we don't even start generating the tax increase yet.
Thank you. Director Stamer to close, and then we'll ask for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Ms. Fox. So are we going to have the opportunity at the next meeting where we're going to be able to look at not only the 5-year plan, but we're going to be able to look at our surplus numbers. We're going to be able to look at the trajectories on where we're going with some of this. And then we can make that decision going forward in what we're actually going to have in these reserves. Because from what I can see with a few numbers that we're receiving, there seems to be a huge discrepancy on what someone's perceived inflation rate is and what the actual costs are. And it would sure be nice to be able to see exactly in plain black and white exactly what's going on here, particularly when we're getting these requests and we're not getting full information on what those requests are.
Thank you. CFO Fox.
Thank you. So I actually have ran the numbers. I just couldn't have them ready for a presentation and a deliberation, but I have a pretty good idea of where we sit right now and the amount of surplus that's coming forward. So we should be in a really good position to have that conversation in January.
Thank you. Anyone want to make a motion?
Move the motion.
Moved by Councillor Sarai.
Seconder.
Second by Council Director Blackwell. Thank you. All in favor? Contrary minded? Approved. Thank you. Okay, moving through, there is correspondence that you can see. Nothing is required on that. Moving to new business 6.0. No new business. Thank you. So I'll ask that a closed meeting take place following the meeting in accordance with section community charter 92B, the consideration of information received and held in conferences relating to negotiations between hospital district and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. Got a seconder on that? Second by Councilor Sarai, in favor. Thank you, and we will take a recess to figure out our Zoom technology, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you.